podcast? We don't know anymore. Andy, what? I know people are voting for just to keep it Fantasy Fiends podcast, but I disagree wholeheartedly. It cannot be just Fantasy Fiends if we have sci-fi into it now. But that's an argument for our alone time tonight.
The Fantasy Fiends it rolls off the tongue.
It really does.
Sci-fi and Fantasy Fiends, it doesn't really work. So I feel like keeping the name, even though it's only fantasy, we can kind of make it work.
I was thinking, what if we add like a Fantasy Fiends podcast with a dash of sci-fi or something? I don't know.
Now with twice the sci-fi.
Yeah. So we'll figure something out. But I'm Stevie Collier, and I am with my co-host Andy Peliquin, and today we are honored to have back on air Dale Lucas. And since Dale's been on, we've grown, I think, double the size.
Nice.
So yeah, thank you guys for that. We are for sure.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, man. I know for sure we are the largest book podcast that's just for fantasy. And I think even with sci-fi now, we're still the biggest. That's not talking about writing. It's just talking about books, you know?
Right.
And because usually I think the podcasts out there right now, or the shows even, and I know there's no show.
Right.
But podcasts, there are shows, but they're usually either about marketing or actually about writing it. So I've been doing a lot more research into it, so it's kind of cool. Everyone, welcome Anita, Rashawn, Tony, guys. I think Tony actually just won, right, Andy? Tony won the some kind of award, right? He won the Indie Fantasy things or whatever. He gets a free book. I'm sending him a free book.
The Indie Fantasy Addicts Reader of the Month or something like that, right?
Yeah. Turns out Tony's a true freak when it comes to reading. Lisa, how's it going? Wait, who is Lisa? Lisa's new.
Yeah, she's an awesome reader from the Indie Fantasy Addicts group.
Cool. Well, we have an exciting episode today for you guys. I am so prepared. That's I'm so prepared for today.
What that means is that he actually still has no idea what we're talking about.
This is the first time that I've gotten what's it been? Let me check. Almost 3 minutes in, and I have still yet to see what we were talking about.
Oh man!
Oh, it's right. You know, it's right there. Making real history fiction. Great.
Do their homework.
Another topic I can't talk about. Great. So Dale, how's it going, man? What you been up to, man?
It's going good. Well, since the last time we talked, the third book in the Fifth Ward series came out. That's Good Company from Orbit Books. It just came out on August 27th. And so far, all the readers are loving it. I'm very happy to see all of the great feedback and stuff I'm getting, and the fact that it's making people happy everywhere.
Wait, I'm sorry. Not to interrupt. You said from Orbit Books?
From Orbit Books.
Is there a book from you from Orbits?
Yeah.
And it's your first book from Orbit?
This is actually my third book from Orbit.
Okay, because I was just looking at I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just looking at the Hatchet book group.
Hatchet is the big. They're like the big parent company, and Orbit is one of their imprints.
That's right. Okay, sorry to interrupt you. So we have an Orbit guy with us, guys. Yeah. So next time you talk crap about the Fantasy Fiends podcast, there's no Orbits here. Yeah,
in the house.
Gold.
Yeah. No. So that came out on August 27th, and I was just telling Andy earlier that I'm working on a thing for Black Library right now set in the Warhammer universe, and I can't talk any more about that except to say I'm doing something for them. So, but they're very secretive. So,
yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that'll more news about that will come out later, down the road. But
when we have you back on.
Exactly. Then next time I'm here,
it's actually perfect with the movement of the Fantasy Fiends podcast to whatever we're calling it, something sci-fi. I mean, my argument is, I'm just going to say, search engine optimization, people. You got to have science fiction in there. So whoever voted is a true idiot. Anyway. What I was going to say is, yeah, that's perfect, man, because now that we're moving a little bit on to sci-fi and going to the dark side, that's perfect timing. Wait, did I just give away too much?
No, you're fine.
Oh, thank God.
You're fine.
I crap my
Because
pants.
I didn't even specify whether it was the fantasy or sci-fi side. So
Okay. All right.
you don't even know. You just don't know, Steve.
No. With a name like Black Library, it's honestly scary. It's like they're going to be at your doorstep at like 3 o'clock in the morning wearing black hats and overcoats.
Right.
You know, like,
it's like, we're sorry. That's a forbidden tome that you broke into.
You're coming with us.
There really is that air around it, because like you can't find their books anywhere else. It's only in the Black Library, which is something that has not existed. No other publisher does that. So the fact that they do, it does sort of lend it this air of mystique almost.
Yeah, well, and their excuse me, as their fan base is huge and worldwide, and it's both gaming and fiction tied into the gaming, and it's there's just so much going on in there and so much cool stuff to dig into and find, and yet at the same time it's so the feel and the tone is so specifically them. They just seem to do a great job of, they've created like a line of products and they've found their niche and they're just destroying it every day.
Yeah, I've seen some of the Warhammer animated shorts. I haven't read any of the books. Like I said, they're available nowhere else. So
yeah,
I haven't gotten into the books.
They're worth checking out. The hardest part when you're just getting in is literally finding a way in.
Yeah, where's a good starting
you
point.
Look at what's available, and there's literally hundreds and hundreds of novel length works, not to mention collections of short stories and novellas and things like that. It's massive.
Yeah, and some pretty amazing sort of dark, grimdark, gory fiction for people like me.
They are the ones who actually grimdark was taken from their fiction, because in Warhammer 40,000, the epigraph that starts off every one of the books says, the future is a grim, dark place.
Huh.
That's where grimdark came from.
Interesting.
So you learn something new every day.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now I kind of have to go read some.
That's your homework assignment.
All right. Yes, sir.
I know Dale, all I have to do is look at the covers of your books and I instantly remember the reading. And Andy knows I don't have the best memory, but whenever I do remember a reading, it was good. And I can think back, and actually now I'm going to say it out loud. I'm going to feel stupid if this wasn't it, but it was when the dragons were attacking, right? And they were in the gunner, right? They were in the car.
Nope, not me. No dragons. No dragons.
What was this one? That
was
there was another firefighter.
Was that Sean Grigsby's?
Yeah, Sean
that's
Grigsby.
what I'm talking about.
His Smoke Eaters books have a similar
because they all have the same cover.
He and I joke about that all the time.
Okay, I thought
we've got to be pretty good friends, and Sean and I are always making fun of the similarity in the badges. But trying to find a third person who can do like, fantasy medics or something like that.
Well, we actually had a guy on here who did that.
Oh, nice.
Yes, we actually did. Remember, Andy? It was urban fantasy though.
Jamie Davis, yeah.
Oh, Jamie, yeah. No, I did his podcast too. Yeah,
it was actually
he just needs to do the badges on the covers, so we can spread them around everywhere.
That's crazy. So, Dale.
Yes.
Stevie is very scatterbrained today.
I'm here, Stevie. I'm right here.
Finished Japanese homework, and I seriously, like, English just goes out the door. I actually had You're
studying Japanese?
Yes, I am studying Japanese. I have been for a while, but I'm actually taking it in college now, or community.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man, I'm really enjoying it. I do have a funny story though, which I'll say for like my cool thing of the week. Well, part of it. Do you remember the cool thing of the week, Dale?
Cool thing of the week. I don't remember cool thing of the week.
Well, so what we do is every podcast we talk about something cool that happened the past week or sometime soon. But Andy, you want me to just go real quick?
Take it away, Stevie.
Okay, so I've been studying Japanese on and off for 3 years, and I think I've learned 300 kanji, which I'm slowly losing, so I'm not doing that anymore but now I have to again, obviously. But anyway, I would say I'm way more advanced than class 1, but I started it just for the foundational. and the teacher no longer picks me because I talk too much. And I have learned, though, that I ask too complicated of questions, not like boasting or anything, but it does scare students whenever they hear me asking about, kanji or particle questions, or Japanese also has something called it's like counters. So the way they count bowls, they have a different word for circular objects or table-like objects,
flat objects, people, trees, cars. There is like 30 different ways to count.
That's incredible.
And not only that, but they change. So like for numbers 4, 6, 7, 8, they change depending on where they're at in it's crazy. So I ask questions like that, but she walked up because I got so bored in class because now I can't ask questions. Now she doesn't pick on me to talk in class. And I was doing my homework and I just started at page 1 in the workbook, and she just came in and grabbed my book and flipped it over. So I just sit there now and counted 10 million times, but it's cool. It's cool. I love it.
No, you have to pay attention, Stevie.
I know. I sat right in the front of the class too, and she doesn't even look at me anymore. It's like, I guess Japanese, because I guess I'm very like loud, obviously, and the Japanese don't like that very much. I'm very, I don't know, in their face. I don't know, but she's very Japanese. It's hard to ask her questions sometimes because she doesn't understand. Anyway, that's a little bit about me, passionate about Japanese, but it is funny whenever I do answers in French. So it's just a habit. Like instead of height, I say, oh, oui. Anyway.
Oh my God, you speak French too?
Yes, that was my second language.
Oh my God.
Yes, that was fun. It was, I believe French was harder than Japanese at first because just trying to say it, like using the back of your throat.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's fun though. We did get to learn to bow, which was I had a blast with that. Anyway, my cool thing of the week is that the Jigsaw Blade is releasing from Podium Publishing on October 8th. So, and I posted on Collier's Conquerors that I am listening to it now, and I don't laugh out loud often, but this book seriously brought tears to my eyes, and I forget the things that I've written, and just the way this voice actor has said it, seriously, like I about got into a wreck. It was so funny.
Isn't that awesome? The experience of hearing like a really talented reader reading your words.
It's wonderful.
I love that feeling.
I had it with The Dark Assassin, but it was subpar. I didn't get through it all the way before I was like, okay, I don't want to listen to this anymore. The Jigsaw Blade Podium is incredibly professional, and they just make amazing products. So awesome. Yeah, October 8th, guys. Very super fun read or listen. So that is my cool news of the week. Sorry for taking over everything. I just wanted to give everybody an update on the Japanese and how I'm making the teacher uncomfortable.
Bringing your air of the Fantasy Fiends podcast, making us uncomfortable every week all around the world.
This doesn't turn off people. This doesn't
everywhere.
I've tried to figure out how.
Yeah. I take a lot of antidepressants.
Yeah.
Don't we all?
Yeah. So Andy, do you have anything cool, man?
I do. You know what? I mean, aside from this sci-fi story, just some of the coolest, like very possibly the coolest thing I've ever written today happened that I sort of planned, and then I wrote it and I was like, shit, that's awesome. And so it was like, it's been so much fun writing this story. I should have the rough draft finished by next week, which is really exciting for me, getting that one done. Yeah, it's right now at around 56,000 words. I expect it to be around 80 by the time it's done, give or take, which is a very short book for me. Who knew I was capable of writing short?
Yeah.
And then I just got an email today saying that the audiobook of Darkblade Assassin was nominated for a Society of Voice Arts Award.
Nice.
Yeah, the performer, the narrator, Mark Vitor, he's nominated for his performance of that one in the fantasy category, along with R.C. Bray and what's his name? The guy who did Ralph Lister. He did Matt Gilbert's Dead Gods Do.
I was gonna say I know that name.
Yeah.
I know I've heard that name.
He's all over the place too. So there's three, and then Mike Shell, Simon Vance for Aching God.
I know Simon Vance.
Yeah, Simon Vance is the one who did my audiobooks.
Yeah,
and he's amazing. Like,
yeah,
I love that guy. His work is so good.
So it's gonna be a tough competition this year.
Yeah.
Still, just to be nominated though, that's an achievement in itself.
It's always an honor just to be nominated.
Yeah, for
your
sure.
work was so good, you made him shine, Andy.
I think he just made the work shine.
You played a small part in it.
Yeah, just a little bit.
He just sat behind the keyboard, just
keyboard warrior.
Yeah. Andy, you know what I just noticed is that we've never really talked about your tattoos.
Which one?
The one on your butt cheek. Drop them drawers. Let's see them.
What?
You got an elephant. No, I'm not even gonna go that far.
Oh,
real quick, Andy, show us your ink, boy.
This one here.
Nice.
So this one, it says, "There is no evil, only desire, and what you'll do to obtain it." This one here is my anniversary with my wife. I got the tattoo for the year, just because I never remember the year. I get the date right every time, March 23rd, but it's the year that I struggled with. So I got that one. And then I have a tattoo here that says, "Eris quad sum, I am what you will become." And that's a line from Wolverine and Sabretooth. Sabretooth says that to Wolverine, like, "I am the monster. You're going to end up like me." And I love that.
Did they hurt?
I mean, a little bit, as much as you would expect from any tattoo. This one, like the underarm, is usually pretty painful.
Yeah, that's where I got mine there too. And it's ow. That was a tender spot.
What does that feel like?
If you have a lot of stretch marks, it's bad.
It's just like a bunch of little needles all digging into your skin at once.
I heard it was like a cat scratch, kind of.
It's a really tough sensation to describe exactly. But the funny thing is, you hear people talk about it, and you're like, oh, whatever. How bad can it be? And then you sit down there, and they start, and you're like, whoa, what the hell? Seriously?
See, I believe that it's painful. So now when I sit down, maybe I'll either be prepared, be like, wow, this does suck like I thought it was.
Yeah.
So that's actually the only thing that's been keeping me. I want a Star Wars, like the actual, Star Wars, on my forearm. That would be my first. And then I have an addictive personality. So next time on the fantasy,
once you start,
I have it up the neck.
Yeah.
So I want to get the tattoo that the Silver Guards, the Special Forces unit in my sci-fi world, the one that they have.
Cool.
And that's I posted. I kind of mocked up an image of the sword. It's a sword, and with dragon wings instead of, or in place of the, what's it called, the cross guard.
Right.
And then there's like scroll work around it with the motto. I want to get that. I just got to finish designing the motto and stuff, and then talk my wife into letting me get it.
Well, real quick, Dale, what does your tattoo say, if you don't mind?
Oh, that's my son's name in Hebrew, and I only chose Hebrew because his name is Gabriel, and it's originally a Hebrew name, so I figured I'd do it in the old script.
Okay.
I had to get it checked like 6 different ways to make sure I was going to get the exact right thing.
Yeah.
Good. You don't want to get a tattoo in a foreign language or a foreign script and not know what you're actually putting there.
Very true.
I hear that is not all people do that though, Dale. Is what I hear.
No, I've heard horror stories.
Just Google it.
Yeah. It's pretty bad, but it's funny though. I decided to get this when I turned 40, and then it still took me another 2 years to get around to getting the tattoo. But just like everybody says, like the minute I got it, I was already like, oh, what else can I get? So who knows? I might get around to more. Not sure.
Well, before we get on today's topic, I just wanted to say that you guys have like probably these really cool quotes that you could get tattooed on your body. Today's big quote from my book that made me laugh was, "Yeah, don't sniff tree stardust. That shit'll mess you up." As well as, I heard Gooch Troll for the first time in a British accent, and seriously, that was about the time where I turned the wheel.
You absolutely have to tattoo Gooch Troll on your body somewhere.
But my grandma has to see that, dude. What's a
That's part
good
of fun.
show? Actually, the old lady in my book sounds just like Andy's old lady. You there? Like, I can't hear her voice without thinking Andy's behind the mic. I should just, when it's, I should ask Podium if I can post just a snippet of it. So, in fact, I probably can do that. So, anyway, today we're talking about making real history fictional. And today I'm going to learn just with you guys what exactly that means. And Dale, why did you suggest this topic?
I suggested this topic because I am kind of a history buff. The first couple of books I wrote for publication that didn't get published were both set in actual history with fantastic elements folded into them. And I worked really hard in both cases. We talked about it a little bit the last time I was here, how one of them was set during the Spanish conquest of the Aztecs in Mexico, and the other one was set in ancient Rome. And I worked really, really hard to really evoke those settings and bring them to life in a way that felt very real and authentic to me, while at the same time not bogging things down. That's always the toughest thing about deploying research in fiction, is making sure you're not like throwing everything in just to show how much research you did. But what I learned by doing that and trying to put fantasy in real history was that you can do the same in reverse. You can use the examples of real history to make your fantasy a little more realistic and a little more grounded. One of the just one little example is in the second Fifth Ward book. Excuse me. That's probably not the last time that'll happen. In the second Fifth Ward book, my night watchmen in the city have to. They're looking for a thief, and they're talking about how the only vehicles allowed to move through the city at night are what they call the honey wagons, or the wagons that pick up like the urine and excrement that people.
The gong farmers.
Right, gong farmers, exactly. And the only reason it first occurred to me to do that was because I had read somewhere in all of my Roman history that those were the only vehicles allowed to move through the city of Rome at night. Were the vehicles that were picking up these giant jars of piss and shit that would be collected at the bottoms of all like the tenements and the apartment houses and things like that. And then they would take it and they would sell it to farmers as fertilizer. They would sell the urine to tanners for use in leather making and stuff like that. But that one little example is a perfect thing of how you can figure out how to take a real detail out of history and use that to make your fantasy world even more realistic.
You know, playing off of that, in one of my books, I had my assassin character dress up as a gong firmer,
Nice.
go into his target's house and implant little alchemical bombs into the chamber pots that the urine and shit would break down with like a special time release capsule that would set off smoke bombs.
Dude,
like
fantastic.
I know it was. I had no idea how the guy was going to get into this absolutely fortified stronghold. And I was researching it, and it was just like it was just perfect. And so basically, he's sitting on a rooftop watching until there's all of a sudden the house is filled with like explosions and smoke, and it's just terrible. And it sends all of it sends the guy who's there running for cover, basically, and brings him out into the open for him to pick off. And it was so much fun because I don't think anybody has ever done something like that before.
No, that's and that's the thing is that. Excuse me. That's the thing is that there's so many little details that can be easily mined and easily put to use. And they bring things to life in such a fantastic way. And I guess my way of thinking has become basically I don't invent unless I really have to. What I'd rather do is find a real thing and just clothe that or cover that how I want to cover it and use that instead. And I even do it with things like just trying to get an idea for, say, how long it takes for you know, a war between an Iron Age army to play out. You know, how long does it take to call in all the guys from the countryside, and how long does it take to march them off to the place where they're going to do battle? And I make a lot of lists, I make a lot of timelines and things like that, and it's for exactly that purpose. I literally just want to see how things play out chronologically, so that then I have a better idea about what's a realistic chronology for the things I want to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Like for the Silent Champion series, I literally researched military history. I mean, it's history. That's all we've got to go on is tactics that have been used in the past by these super intelligent and creative generals. And so you really get these bits and pieces from history, not only the martial stuff, but the approach to battle. I mean, if you look at the military history of a country like China or Japan versus the military history of, you know, Mexico during the Spanish conquest, or, you know, the Wild West, or Europe in any of the big wars, or Africa, like everywhere is so different because, you know, these people have evolved to do war according to their terrain, their resources. And so it's amazing how different things or places that are so close together can be so absolutely different. Like the difference between the Greeks and the Persian Empire during that period of conflict, it was so vast. You know, like there was I was reading this book on Herodotus, the historian, and he's talking about how the Greeks actually started fighting each other on the battlefield with the Persians right in front of them. Like they hate the Greeks hated nobody more than the Greeks. Like they hated each other more than the Persians. And just that kind of stuff that would be ridiculous in, say, Napoleonic era Europe, or you know, any number of these other countries. But then because of the very specific culture and stuff, you can, like, the culture informs the history and the history informs the culture.
Yeah. Back and forth, you know, and sometimes you just don't even realize the variety of ways that a given situation can play out, or the tiny little things that can make a big difference. I forget who actually said it, but there's a famous quote from history where someone was talking about, like, the loss of some great battle for want of a nail.
Oh yeah, that's one of those popular poems. For want of
I think it's got something.
For want of a nail, a shoe was lost. All of that.
Right, but the thing is, when you start doing a lot of historical reading, you start finding stuff like that. Just these crazy stories about, oh my God, like, how did that play out the way it did? Why did that play out the way it did? So yeah, that's just. That's how I like to approach things. The same way, when I have an idea about a character, I often like to go looking for not just one historical model. I often want to go for several. I want to find a few people who seem to embody some of the psychology and the goals and the ideas of a given of this person I'm imagining, so that I can draw from, like, all 3 or 4 of them and mash them all together.
So you create character profile based on real life historical figures.
Yes. Yeah. I'll try and find ways to incorporate what they, how or why they reacted to things in a certain way. And usually that's that's what it comes down to. Folks at home, I'm getting over a cold and I'm going to be coughing a lot tonight. I was telling the guys before we got on, just so you know.
Can you give us an example of a character that you created and who you created them based off of?
Well, actually, for a recent project that I'm working on that's still kind of in process, I circled back to cough drop. I circled back to ancient Rome, and I wanted to do something that's fantasy secondary world, but with an ancient Roman feel to it. And I created a young emperor, and my main inspiration for him was the Emperor Hadrian, who I had already done a lot of reading on and already knew a lot about. But knowing what I knew about Hadrian and how he was different than the character I was creating, one big difference was their ages. Hadrian became emperor when he was like 42 or something like that, 42, 43. And mine is a little younger. He's supposed to be like in his mid 30s.
Okay.
So I went looking for guys. I looked at guys like Alexander the Great. I looked at John F. Kennedy. And there was a fourth one. Oh, it might have been Julian the Apostate, Emperor Julian of the Byzantine Empire. And I sort of looked at all four of them and drew all of the most interesting things that I thought I could draw from them that also fit together. I had to make sure that those things could all square with each other. So I just used that to kind of create this guy who I wanted to be, on the one hand, incredibly charming and visionary and inspiring, and sort of beloved by the people. And yet and he was well-intentioned and definitely had an idea about what he wants to guide his empire through. But at the same time, he is also very self-serving and very vain and very arrogant and self-interested. So finding ways to balance those things with each other to make sure that in the end you can see this character and believe that he can be both things at the same time. I just find that it's that mixing and matching those things out of history helps me do that.
Actually, I was just reading something the other day that George R. R. Martin, he took too much from history. So is that possible? They just take too much history with lack of creativity from the author.
Well, and that's something that you can run into where you start, and that's actually something I can look back at my old work way back when I was just sort of starting to write really seriously, where I wouldn't try hard enough. I would basically say, oh, I'm going to create this culture and they're like the Vikings, So they've all got names that start with J and end with C, and they wear wolf skins and they have really badass ships, but you're not trying very hard. You're just taking you're taking the surface stuff and those little things, but you're not really trying to create a culture or create a people or create real characters. That's why I think it's more interesting to try and specifically draw from a few different places, because then they kind of cross-pollinate each other. And you don't run into that thing of, oh, it's just this group with the name changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did something like that with my Legion of Heroes, which is very similar to the Roman Legion, but instead of it being an army, run by the government, it is more of a thing based around religion in service to one of the gods. And so like you said, I like taking something that exists and then covering it up or altering it, tweaking it a little bit, to make it more interesting and to fit into the world in a different way. Because then it also changes the context. You're not going to have people who treat this legion the same way the Roman Legion was treated or perceived. It's going to be a totally different kind of thing. Maybe their attitudes will be more or less patriotic, more or less religious. It changes according to the context, which again opens up some really interesting scenarios that you can explore through the story.
Yes. No, that's exactly it. And the sidebar to all of that is that just reading more about history in general is really interesting. And the more stuff you learn about anything and everything, then the more information you have to pour into your fiction.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it all goes in the blender,
The things, those little details pop up at the weirdest times and they work, like the gong firmer thing,
Yeah.
It just happens to work out I don't think I'll ever use it for a book again.
Yeah.
But it worked.
That's actually one of the things I always run into is in almost every era that I've researched specifically, you always find some person with a job that you're like, I can't even imagine that there was a person whose job was that, whatever that happens to be. So, but yeah, it's something I never really get tired of. And I'm also kind of a research hound anyway. I constantly like to just get information about things and fill up the library in my head. So it never stops. Stevie, what are you thinking?
Well, I was going to ask you if you think all novels have to be based on history, or can you just 100% wing it with just 100% creativity?
I know several brilliant writers who can just jump right in. R.J. Barker is one of them. After reading Age of Assassins, I asked him about his process and his world building. He's like, "Oh, I just make it up as I go," and I'm like, "You bastard!" Like, I can't believe that that's the outcome you got with just making it up as you go. I think it's like all writing advice, which all writing advice is just guidelines. It's suggestions, and every writer has to figure out what works for them. Some people get bogged down in research and don't want to be bothered with it, and they work better when they're free to just kind of bounce along and do whatever. And some people like to do things a little more like slowly and carefully. They like to sort of let the ideas bake a little longer before putting them out there. And neither way is right. It's just whatever leads to a good outcome.
Yeah, I often tell people, research is good, but it can definitely be a loophole, Yeah, you just kind of get stuck. And that's why I hear that happens a lot with a lot of Dungeons and Dragons masters as well, or DMs, dungeon masters, that they get into that, it's all about the world building, but not about the player experience too.
Yeah, no, it's always got to be about story. It's always got to be about story and about character and about things happening to people you care about.
Yeah, right. I would be on the opposite side of the spectrum, but with now that I'm writing a new science fiction novel, I definitely had to do a lot more research, and I probably spend an hour and a half every night watching Gundam stuff or playing mech video games, or actually going through ideas of how mechs could move depending on fake like fantasy energies and stuff, which is the most research I've ever had to do on something. With fantasy, I could always just create something, some sort of magic.
Actually, and I've had a few sci-fi ideas that I've wanted to explore, but I haven't, for precisely that reason. I feel like there's too much actual science I would need to be responsible for. and
I hate it.
I don't think I could handle that.
I know. With fantasy, you can kind of get away with a lot. Like I use alchemy to cover everything, So the alchemist, someone's poisoned. Oh, non-specific poison effects on the body, non-specific, poison antidote. Whereas now with the sci-fi, this character has got cardiac hypertrophy. So there's a very specific way of treating it, and very specific, side effects and specific drugs that now I have to know all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's annoying.
Although one thing that I had heard that made me feel a little better about that was Daniel Abraham, one half of James S.A. Corey, that writes the Expanse books, the pseudonym that he and his partner share on those books. Someone asked him once if they do a lot of research and stuff for the Expanse. Since it's sort of near future sci-fi, like not far, but, say 100 or 200 years out. And he was like, no, we decided when we began that we wanted it to be more story driven. And I think the phrase he used was, so we decided like Wikipedia logic was enough. It has to sound more or less right, and it can't completely and totally contradict the laws of physics. But they're not going to go, actually calculating like orbital times and mass ratios and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm doing the same thing with mine. It's like as few specific details as possible.
Yeah.
While still making it real enough that that it's a story. The story is what matters, regardless. The details. Exactly. The details, when they're super wrong, then they ruin the story. When they're right enough, they keep the story going.
Yeah. And, Stevie, circling back to what you were asking, I've also heard of some writers that how they like to do it is they'll wing it and do a first draft. And then they'll, oh my God, I chased him away.
Yeah, you drove him away with your wisdoms, Dale.
Damn it.
Yeah.
Oh. But no, some folks like to do that on a first draft. And then they'll go back and find the specific places.
Sorry.
Information.
Yeah, I I do the same thing. Like I was saying, I'm talking about this medical stuff right now. So I have my sister's a nurse, so I was able to talk with her about it. But otherwise, I'll be like, insert critical health problem that causes, tensional moment, and then I know what's going to happen, so then I can, come back and write it later after I do all the research. But yeah. Anyways, I think we are running out of time. We've only got 20 minutes left, so we better get to this reading.
That went fast.
Yes. Sorry, I locked the girlfriend out of the apartment, so.
Will you let her back in later, or is she on a timeout?
I was going to make a bad joke, but I will get in trouble. It is
Stay there and you think about what you did.
Nothing. No, it's not funny. It's just mean. I'm too nice.
See, he's right there in the room, so he's got to be very, very careful what he says.
I totally understand.
It's why I make my wife go upstairs, or our son needs to go tutoring across the city just to make sure I don't get in trouble for anything.
Exactly. I am free while I'm sitting here.
Did you ever watch Key and Peele?
Oh yeah.
They have that one.
I didn't watch it religiously, but I've seen stuff of theirs over the years.
There's that one sketch with Bitch, and the two guys, they're talking and they're like, so I told her. They look around, Bitch, like super quietly, and they're going. And then as soon as the wives walk back in, oh yes, of course, dear, and like it's so funny because it's exactly what happens.
Oh, totally. Yeah. You know that woman rules your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right.
Same way.
So we've got this reading passage. As far as I can see, there's two characters, right? There's Klytos and the elven sorceress.
Yes, Lycus.
All right.
You send it to both of us?
And so awesome.
Do you want to read Klytos? I think he's got fewer lines than the narration.
Let me see here.
Hopefully it won't strain your throat too much.
Hey Dale, did you send me a reading to both of us?
Oh man, did it not get sent to you, Stevie?
I just searched my email and I just don't see anything. So I'm
then I am a giant loser and I didn't send it to you.
No, man, it's all good.
I sent it now. You should have it in your email inbox.
Thank you, sir.
There you go. And where are you reading?
Who's playing
my document right now? It's right here in front of me.
We're reading The Slaughter Priest, Twisted and Writhed, which is a great start already.
There it is.
Do you want me to email you the document too, Dale?
Oh, for crying out loud. I can't believe it. It should be right here in front of me, but
I've got it.
Clearly I failed. So yeah.
Come on. Excerpt from Blessed Oblivion. Wait, that's the one, right?
Yep.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure.
There we go. Fantasy Fiends packet. Open up. My bad, guys.
You're good, man. You're just pulled a Stevie. It's cool.
Alrighty, so you want me reading Klytos?
Yeah, so I think it's fewer lines.
All right, I'm on it.
Do you want to do the narration or do you want to be the girl?
I can do narration. It's up to you.
All right, I'll do the girl.
Okay.
Take it away.
Guys? Hey, y'all can't hear anything over there, can you?
Mm-mm.
No?
Little bit.
All right. The slaughter priest twisted and writhed on the hillside, his enormous, muscular frame smoking as his foul skin blistered and cracked. As Klytos stared, horrified, the slaughter priest's body seemed to be eaten by squirming, devouring worms, a pure light from the inside out. The whole process took seconds. In the span of a breath, the slaughter priest's scream was cut off, echoing into the void that claimed him as the writhing, devouring glowworms guttered out like spent embers and disappeared. Stunned, Klytos turned toward the elf woman. Her cowl had finally been removed. Her long, dark hair waved placidly in the night winds, the tapered points of her ears finally visible. Though she was disheveled and slightly worse for wear, her stark, frighteningly beautiful face suggested a calm strength, fierce determination, and indomitable with an equal measure. Clearly, she was not one to be trifled with. Clyto stood and snatched his warblade from where it lay among the ashen remains of the slaughter priest.
My thanks,
he said, nodding toward her.
Nailing that voice, man.
But I had hoped to do the rescuing, not to be rescued.
Such gratitude.
The elven sorceress said drowly, then lowered her staff and turned round. She moved to the still prone figure of her swordsman companion, the one slain by her own hand as a blood sacrifice, and knelt beside him.
Who was he?
Clytos asked.
A servant? A slave?
A friend.
The sorceress said, almost to herself.
True and faithful. He knew his death could fuel magic sufficient to lay them low. Most of them, anyway.
She laid a single pale hand upon his still body.
What were the two of you doing here?
Clytos pressed.
In sight of a Khornate battle camp.
The elf sorceress stood again.
Don't worry your shiny, empty head over it,
she said. Then, staff in hand, she turned northward and began a confident march.
Hold on,
Clytos shouted.
You can't go that way. There are more of them.
Your grasp of the obvious is astounding,
she said, not stopping.
I will find a way through. I have to.
That's folly, and you know it,
Clytos said, following close behind her. She was not listening. Well ahead of him, she mounted the slope of another hill and trudged upward toward the ridgeline. It was at the crest of the hill that Clytos finally caught up with her. She stared down upon the vast, level plain, the Khornate horde's camp, blighting the landscape like a festering burn scar. On the soughing winds, Clytos heard the rattle of chains and the crackle of flames, mingled with cruel laughter and mournful lamentations. Beyond the Khornate camp, an eerie blue-green glow marked the place where horizon and sky met.
What is that?
The elven sorceress asked, eyes narrowing.
A procession of night haunts,
Clytos said.
They sometimes follow in the wake of the blood god's minions, scavenging tortured spirits from the battlefield.
The sorceress stared, eyes locked on the spectral light. Clytos studied her by the glow of the gibbous moon. Her face was a mask of cold analysis, weighing all options, considering all variables.
Where is it you're trying to get to?
Clytos asked. The sorceress turned then and seemed to study him long and hard. Clytos knew that all she saw was the implacable, unreadable mask of the Sigmarite great helm. But there was still a strange, probing quality to her gaze that seemed to penetrate beyond the mask, beyond his hazel eyes, into the very locus of his soul and consciousness. Though armored from head to toe, he suddenly felt naked, exposed. Instinctively, Clytos took a single step backward, the only retreat he could remember making since being plucked out of mortality by holy Sigmar.
Who are you?
He asked.
My name,
the elven sorceress said,
is Lycus Evermorn. My companion and I were sent by our coven to recover something very precious, lost on the other side of that.
She suggested the vast Khornate camp.
I need to reach a citadel back in the foothills. That is what my companion and protector died for.
Impossible,
Clytos said.
Even if you get past the camp itself, the country in its wake will be crawling with the servants of Khorne. And that's to say nothing of the terrors of Shyish itself, both living and dead.
Then come with me.
Lycus Evermorn said.
As you've seen, I have powers of my own. But I could use a strong warrior, a faithful warrior, at my side.
No,
Clytos said flatly.
I cannot abandon my storm hosts, my duty.
Your duty is not only to Sigmar,
Lycus said,
but to order and light. Believe me when I say the artifact I seek is powerful enough to risk anything for its recovery. Because if the enemy discovers it, its power will be theirs and serve their vile ends alone.
And what is this artifact?
Clytos asked.
A stone,
Lycus said.
Pure Shyish realm stone, calcified and bound into the form of a large amethyst. In the simplest terms, it restores all things, rebuilds that which was broken, regenerates that which was lost. It remains safe and hidden in an out-of-the-way abbey in the foothills, but its keeper and her initiates were forced to flee before she could recover the stone from its hiding place. She tried to backtrack and retrieve it, but her attempt was unsuccessful.
Klytos barely heard any of the words she said after. It restores all things, rebuilds that which is broken, regenerates that which was lost. No, he thought, impossible. It is heresy, betrayal.
If it is so precious,
he said,
so powerful, then go to the Stormhost commander and ask for a full conclave.
If that was what I had wanted, I would have already done so.
Lycus snapped dismissively.
A larger force is a larger target. Malazar and I had thought to slip through, just the two of us. But now I am forced to continue alone.
She stared down at the plane.
I need your help, Klytos.
She finally said, eyes still on the enemy camp below.
And I will reward you for your aid.
He had not told her his name, nor anything about himself. It had not been his imagination. She had opened him, examined him, and learned of his secret yearning. Lycus Evermorn turned her large, dark eyes upon him. There was pity in those eyes now, even understanding.
I know what you desire most of all, Klytos. The Realm Stone can provide it.
He thought of the child, the woman, that rough, wizened hand in his own. I could have them again, he thought. In my mind, in my heart, part of me.
No,
Klytos said, turning from her.
I cannot. This is a violation of my oaths, of my duty.
He started to descend the hill.
It's true what they say, then.
Lycus Evermorn said.
You Stormcast are a horde of mindless automatons. Slave, without a speck of self-awareness or free will.
Klytos stopped, rounded on her.
I am no slave. I serve because I was chosen.
She moved closer, her gaze meeting his.
Then prove it and help me. I know you want to. You will remember everything, Klytos. Their names, the life you shared with them. If your existence for all the ages to come is to consist of endless cycles of death and resurrection in the name of Holy Sigmar, should you not do so with the recollection of who you were and what you lived for?
Their names, their faces, the woman's dark skin against his own, songs he sang to his newborn babe, lazy afternoons among wildflowers under sunny skies, all that and more could be his again, his last memento of all they shared.
The reforging,
Klytos said, mind already turning to the future.
Immaterial,
Lycus said.
Once I restore what has been lost to you, it cannot be taken away again. I swear it.
This is folly, he thought. Only disaster can come of this. To abandon your storm host? To aid this woman? To feed a selfish desire? I serve, he reminded himself. I fight, and I have been loyal unto death 1,000 times over. Should I not reclaim this one small thing? Klytos sighed. He had already made his decision, hadn't he?
Let me recover my shield,
he said, and marched down the hill. Excelente!
Nice.
Very, very cool.
Yeah, that was the story that I wrote for Black Library, set in the Age of Sigmar setting, their fantasy setting for their games, and that was released back in June. It's only available as an ebook, but it's like a standalone e-story.
Wow!
But you can get it through their own online store, the Black Library store, or you can get it on Amazon or most of the other online bookstores. So,
how long is it?
It's I think it ended up being about 12,000 words.
Nice.
Like that. So,
okay.
Yeah, but it was for my first foray into that universe and getting to work with them. It was it was a lot of fun, and I was really glad that they seemed to like what I offered them as much as I liked writing it. So
I know I've been wanting to try the game out. So
the game, like when you get into that, it's actually played in physical terms, like on tabletops with
that's what I want to try.
It can become a very expensive hobby.
Really? It's expensive.
It can be, yeah, because people want to keep building bigger and bigger armies. So you'll see these guys. There are actually Warhammer stores in certain cities.
Yeah, we have one near me actually. Couple of them.
Yeah, I've got a couple near me. One in over on the other side of Tampa, and one over in Orlando. But yeah, the guys will show up with like these big rolly carts full of all of their armies and stuff, and they're putting them out on the tables, and it's like, oh my god,
it's the nerdy guy's golf, basically.
Yeah, if I had more free time, see, I still have a full-time day job, so that I have to write around. So if I had more free time, I would probably do a lot more gaming. But right now, my writing is basically the only hobby I have time for on the side.
Oh, that's so weird. Lisa wants to come on the show. Oh, she's naked right now.
No,
I'm kidding. She said, "I wish." There was something I was going to say. Oh, Andy, that gives me a really good idea. We should, I mean, one of us, I'm not a really good dungeon master, but we should run our own games and then force the guests to go through our crazy campaign.
That would be hella fun.
It would, but it would be embarrassing for people who watch. They're like, okay, they don't know what they're doing. Well, and I've read all of the manuals, and I still don't know what I'm doing.
No, too much math.
It's really difficult. We could do it on Roll20, which does the math for you, but it's just, if you forget one rule, I feel like I would get crucified for that. You know,
Yeah.
You have to have someone who knows the game really well to
Joshua Robertson, man.
For your first time out, anyway.
Yeah.
Well, no, to run a good game, you kind of have to know the ins and outs so that you can make sure, you know, like if you've got a ranger who's got a 25-yard range and he's 30 yards away, what's the you know, the deficit? What's the minus on their roll? Or, you know, things like that. Just like stuff that you have to know.
Yeah. Every time over the past few years that I've tried to get back into gaming that way, and I'll jump into the manuals and start reading them, and it's like, no.
yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot. When you already got to think about like building a world, learning a totally different world is just a lot.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that I was actually, Lisa and I were at Barnes and Noble the other day. Go figure. That's where we basically camp out in Barnes and Nobles and half price books. But I was telling her, I was like, I wish there was a role-playing board game where it was almost as vast as Dungeons and Dragons, but I know that's impossible for what I'm looking for. But everything is set in stone. No one can argue. You know, you go through a certain campaign. The book tells you what to do, but I don't know how I could figure out how to create something like that. It would be too, kind of like a choose your own adventure, but it would be too large, I think. The options would be too much. I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly. But before we get off, I got asked on Colliers Conquerors to do a small preview of I Am Mech. I just had one sentence I was going to say real quick, if that's okay with you guys.
Do it.
So our hero, I actually changed him a lot. I went through and changed his character a lot, but he's trying to ask out a human girl. He's Archaean right now. That alien race could change. So Jack felt blood rush quickly to his head, and his hands grew clammy almost in an instant. He'd been reading so many books on how to tame a female, as was the phrase used in Archaean language. Unfortunately, it did not translate well to English, as he'd received many a slap from trying. He tried to go through the phrases he'd learned in books such as female humans for dummies, and the human next planet, and Archaeans are from Galaxy Gorbatrix Sector S197, and women are from Oregon. Not to mention his personal favorite: cats, chocolate, Pride and Prejudice, and other human female interests. So that was a little segment of I Am Mech and the personality of Jack. So
it sounds like it's going to be a fun book.
Yeah, I think fun is how I would describe it. It got really dark really quick, so I might have to tone it back for Jonathan. Once he started vomiting with his arm cut off, I was like, might have to pull it back a little bit. So anyway, and also real quick, I can tell I'm using fantasy words in it, like shall, you know. I know it's a dumb example, but they start adding up, you know. It's crazy. It's crazy how you just kind of. Anyway, sorry, Dale.
That's okay.
That's a tangent show.
The fantasy language clicks in.
Oh God! Wow, that was actually really spot on. Almost. I did read Dating for Dummies when I was like a teen. It did not help. Like zero. Oh, and I read a how to ask a girl out the Christian way.
Oh God.
Oh, I got it from a Half Price Books like when I was like 12. The worst thing ever. Like you go opposite, you know. You go backwards with that one.
Do whatever they tell you not to do.
I should have kept it, but the book was written in the 90s, so the guy has like a turquoise shirt with like baggy blue jean pants.
Oh my God.
And the girl's got like big curly hair. Oh, it's horrible. Anyway, Dale, where can people find you, man?
They can find me. Let's see. I'm on Twitter. Let me pull up the packet here, and I can actually give you the thing. You can you can find me on Facebook at author Dale Lucas, on Twitter at Dale Lucas 114. I'm also on Instagram, dale.lucas.90. The Instagram is still pretty young, and I'm still figuring that all out. So I don't post there as often as I do on Twitter and Facebook.
I need to try Twitter. Twitter seems pretty fun.
Yeah, and it's you know, I'm spotty. Sometimes I'm really good about it, and sometimes I'll go like a week at a time without putting anything on there.
Facebook is such a time sink though for me. Like
it can be.
I used to go there right before I'd start writing, and then not to say I'm like this huge author, but man, I got tons of emails or messages every day and things going on. It's like,
yeah,
I could do this all day.
But, it's easy to go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's what another author was. As I was talking to another author on Facebook about being a time sink. Anyway, yeah, thanks a lot, Rebecca. That was great. Really, Rebecca should just like send me jokes for the book. They're actually kind of my style for the book. So
she's warming up for our next episode, for our 500 subscriber episode.
Oh, nice. Is she gonna be on there?
No, so the drinking game is that every time you say something that she can turn into an innuendo, we drink. We are gonna be so drunk.
I will try not to make it an innuendo, and then I'll forget, and then it'll get bad again.
And then in your effort to try to not make it an innuendo, you will make it a totally different kind of innuendo.
Yeah,
that's just the way life works.
I'm sure our clever listeners and viewers will be able to fix that all up for us and make sure that we don't leave trashed. Anyway, that's it for the Fantasy Fiends podcast, guys. We hope you enjoyed your stay at the Fantasy Fiends Inn. We hope you're enjoying the changes that are coming, even though there aren't that many changes. Just Andy and I have gone to the dark side, the galaxy side. Anyway, that's a horrible joke. It's horrible. Andy, just take it away, man.
And with that, we are signing out. Tune in next Thursday night for Amber Morant. If she can't make it for some reason, it'll probably be the 500th subscriber episode where Stevie and I talk and get super drunk. So it's going to be a blast either way.
Wait, her name's Morant?
Morant.
It's probably because, she keeps hiring the same test guy, and then she's like, oh, more ants.
Stevie,
cancel.
No, I'm taking this away. And with that, before Stevie tells more shitty jokes, good night.
Good night.
Good night.